go. Well, welcome, graduates. You have the best day ever for graduation, huh? That's very cool. My staff, we were laughing when they kept saying I was a special guest, that you guys thought Beyonce was going to walk up here or something. Sorry, it's just me. But it is wonderful to be here with your president. I was here for her incredible inauguration. How many of you were here for that? That was an amazing event. And Dr. Jennifer Scanlon, I know you're looking forward to hearing her commencement speech. But I just came to congratulate you, and I love being at these graduations. And every time I hear that music, I think about two things. As you walk in, I think about my fear that I was going to trip when I walked in for myself for several graduations. And the second is I always remember this moment when I was called at the very last minute when I was the prosecutor in Hennepin County to the White House, and I'd never even been there on a tour. And I was asked to introduce then President Clinton. He was introducing some hate crimes legislation. And I stood outside the door, and they started playing. It was just like this, the music, and they did the Hail to the Chief, you know, da, 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 da. And I just started walking into the East Room. And all of a sudden, I felt this big hand on my shoulder, and this voice says, "I know you're going to do great out there, but when they play that song, I usually go first." That actually happened to me, so anything you do today will be better than that. Anything. But this is your turn, you Hamline graduates, to go first, to take your step on this big stage. And you have such a fine degree, something so much to be proud of. You think about Hamline's ranking as the top university of its class in Minnesota, according to U.S. News and World Report. You think about that you just produced the Minnesota 2016 Teacher of the Year. How great is that? Right, Abdul? You think about what your graduates are going on to do or have gone on to do. From the nonprofit management student who sees how some of our neighborhoods lack access to fresh food, and instead of simply writing a paper, creating the first mobile market in St. Paul with fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, and dairies that makes weekly stops at 18 St. Paul locations. Or how about the writing graduate who went to your school while he was still in practicing law, and then went on to use that degree to write a book about an Italian philosopher that just won the Bar Association Best Book of the Year last year. Why am I telling you that? Because that was my husband. He actually got an MFA degree here at Hamline many years ago, and that is a true story. So I kind of know close to home how great these degrees are. So Hamline is a great place, and you have this amazing opportunity now to use this education and use the power of this education. For many of you, you changed careers, or for many of you, you got out of college and made a decision to get a degree here. Some of you may be the first in your family to be getting a graduate degree like this, and it gives you responsibilities, and you understand the value of this education. For me, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for education. Not just my husband's story, but my grandpa had to quit school when he was in 6th grade. His parents died about 8 years later, but they had no money. There were 9 kids in the family, and he worked underground in the mines up in Ely his whole life, and he'd go down in this cage, and he wanted to be in the Navy, but every day he would go down there so he could send my dad and his brother to college. And he saved money in a coffee can in his basement so he could do that. And my dad ended up going to Ely Junior College, and then he came here and got a journalism degree and went on to interview everyone from Chicago Bears coach Mike Ditka. Some of your older family members will remember who he was, to Ronald Reagan, to Ginger Rogers. And my mom got her teaching degree in Milwaukee, and she ended up coming here, and she taught till she was 70 years old. And I still meet people who had her when they were in 2nd grade. So I stand before you as the granddaughter of an iron ore miner and the daughter of a teacher and a newspaper man, and the first woman elected to the United States Senate from the state of Minnesota. That is what education is all about. So I'm going to leave the advice to your commencement speaker. I don't know what it'll be, but I defer to that. But I will just give you this little piece of advice. You have these great degrees now. You go out there, and sometimes your first job or your first assignment or your first thing you do with your degree isn't exactly what you dreamed of. I can tell you this: my first job in politics was working for then Vice President Mondale. I was so excited. I thought I was going to, write all these great policy papers. I was assigned to do the furniture inventory and crawl under every desk and lamp and chair for almost a month to write down the serial numbers. And I learned two things from that experience. One, he was honest, nothing was missing. He's from Minnesota, right? But the second thing I learned was take those jobs and those assignments seriously, even though they may not be exactly what you want, because that was my first job in Washington, and this was my second, all right? So just remember that. You're really coming in at a time where we couldn't have more challenges in our country, in the world. Yes, you have this degree and you have a plan for yourself, but you also have to think of the world around you and thinking about wherever you go to work, that you do that work and you pursue that career for yourself and your family, but you also take the time to volunteer. Take that time and that spirit you've learned here in Hamline to help other people, to help in the world around, to listen to different views, which is something you uniquely learn in graduate school that's sometimes missing in our discourse and in our politics today. If you're liberal, listen to a conservative, listen to a liberal, and just take some time to listen to those different voices and views and of people from different religious and ethnic backgrounds that look different than yourselves, because we're living at a time where people are going into corners, and that's not what you learned here at that school. You learned how to work together and how to get things done for the greater good. So that is the end of my advice. But I do invite you to our offices if you're ever in Washington or your families are for fun or for business. Every Thursday morning when the Senate's in session, we have breakfast for the entire state of Minnesota. If you're really lucky, you'll come the day we serve Spam puffs. We also always serve something from our state. But when you come into our offices, you'll see there's a picture on this wall, and it's a picture of an angel, and she's handing off the globe, handing off the world to some outstretched hands. And the words on the picture read, "In my dream, the angel shrugged and said, 'If we fail this time, it will be a failure of imagination.' And then she placed the world gently in the palm of my hand." So today, your great teachers and your parents and your friends and your husbands and wives and sisters and brothers and kids are placing that world in the palms of your hands. And judging from what I know about Hamline, there will not be a shortage of imagination or creativity or ambition or smarts. So please take that world and handle it gently and bring it home for us, and use your imagination that you've learned at this great school. Thank you, and have a great graduation.